Hey gang, I'm at my dad's house in Hartford, Wisconsin. He's not here. He went prairie dog hunting in Montana, so I'm totally alone in my big fat childhood home. And I was in the basement today, the second basement. There's actually a few basements. I think I'm not really supposed to talk about them. It's in case there's a zombie attack or a nuclear war. In any event, under the staircase for one of them is a box filled with my old journals and diaries from my monastic days. So this finding coincided with the fact that I have nothing to talk about this week, but there's some really interesting entries that give you kind of a look or a glimpse into what what life is like for a young monk. And so I'm just going to kind of read through some of these diary entries today and fill the time. So I don't have a corncob pipe to smoke and puff on and a nice little smoking jacket on a rocking chair, but that's the setting I want to set for today's little video. This is an entry from, I think it was 2005, July 6th. Snake! Taijo and I caught a titanic, thick, gorgeous diamondback rattler up by the compost bins. He was coiled, tongue clicking, ready to strike from behind a chunk of 2x4. I lowered the snake catcher. So we had this claw at the monastery, and it was like this long, and it had a little hook on the end, and you pulled a little rope, and it would grab the snake by the back of the neck. We had to catch rattlesnakes at Mount Baldy. That was part of my job. So I lowered the snake catcher lower, and his tongue darts out, and you can see the intricate universe of needle-thin muscles contract. I couldn't do it. I lost the nerve. I sat there thinking, wow, so this is what it feels like to back down. I remember this. I knew rattlesnakes can eject themselves out of their coiled position like several yards and bite you and you die. So I got scared. Meanwhile, believe it or not, I have to take a massive number two. I was just on the verge of number twoing in the compost toilets when Marcella, a student, told me to help this monk. So I get cramped and constipated. Finally, the monk works up the nerve. He says, okay, we gotta just work up the nerve and do it. Boy, I've never seen one this big. Can he? And then I said, so he goes, I've never seen one this big. I remember this all now. And then I was like, can't he just jump up and bite your hand? And the monk goes, think positive. So he lowers the catcher into the compost area, standing over it, standing on the bin where the shovels, etc. are, and he clamps the neck of the snake. This is why he was head monk and I was a chicken monk, because when push came to shove, one of us was going to do the job and one of us was going to watch. I remember this. The monk says, it's either him or us, he shouts. Come on, guy, come on. And he's struggling with it. It's strong, God! So he picks it up and we get it in the bucket. Okay, this is not fun to talk about. And now we have to kill it, execute it. So we didn't ever do this at the monastery. We would always take the monks, put them in a bucket, put a lid on top, and then let them go down the hill so that they were someone else's problem. But this one, we couldn't do it. It was too strong, it was too scary. And as I recall, it was really an enormous snake. It was like this thick, okay? So he made the decision that we had to kill it. So we pour water in the bucket to drown it, and then I left the head monk there. I went down to Banca, which is our afternoon chanting. Banca's like an hour 15 minutes long. I do that. I'm walking back to the kitchen where I was the tenzo, the guy who's in charge of the making the meals for the retreat that we were at, and I hear the monk shouting my name, Canto, get up here! So I run back up there, and this monk, Johan, is up there, and he's going, it's still alive! It's still alive! He says, it won't let go! It's raging still! And it just rose up out of the water to bite the monk after he let go of it. So he puts it in the bucket, lets go of it, and it comes up out of the water like something out of an 80s horror movie to bite him. So the thing won't die, all right? So, it says we bash its skull in, and it's still alive. kicking madly. This is a little dark. Trigger warning, belated. So eventually, these are very short notes on the actual execution of the snake. Sohan chops its head off. I kept thinking of Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey. And the hero's journey, the rites of passage, as it was happening, as we were murdering this poor snake. I thought, with my snake karma, I need to do this, to catch it. I want to be the one. But it made more sense that the head monk did it, because he's done this 1,000 times, so I stepped aside. I'm still constipated, but it's starting to slip out a little at a time. Interesting sidebar here. When you're as constipated as I am right now, your farts smell like secrets. Yeah, that's all you need to hear about that. That's the snake story. Oh God. So the monastery, Mount Baldy, where I lived, I mean, there were scorpions everywhere, there were snakes everywhere. I came out once after I'd gone grocery shopping and a bear had crawled into the truck and was tearing through the groceries. It was a really wild place. Anybody who thinks when you go to a monastery, you're just sitting around staring at your navel are sadly mistaken. This is from April 13th, it's a few months earlier. I'm embarrassed to even tell. I found 2 websites for people looking to hook up. Apparently I was in the office a lot during these days. I think what happened was all the monks were gone on their Benji days, which are the days you get off after the formal Seichu training period. I was at the monastery alone after a really hardcore training period. And what do you do when you're a monk by yourself? I found 2 websites for people looking to hook up. I'm exploring them, which requires going into my own sexuality. I can feel the guilt, which I'm afraid of. I'm afraid of needing women. As I recall, what happened was I found on one website, I remember her, she was a Chinese immigrant. She was 6 feet tall, I'm 5'9", and she was a dominatrix. And we emailed back and forth, and then she started yelling at me, and we never talked again, and I never visited any of the women from these websites. Here are some notes from that same Seikon period. After you do a really hardcore Seichu training period, the Seikon, which is your time off then afterwards, can be kind of a letdown. I came to Mount Baldy to find peace. I came to Mount Baldy because I had failed at everything else. If you're up on this mountain, a lot of stuff didn't work out along the way. I want to get well. I'm tired of trying to achieve things. I'm tired of fighting. I'm tired of trying to be right all the time. I'm tired of trying to get on top. I'm tired of trying to be great. I'm fucking bloody bone deep tired of incessant gnawing failure. It's what I do, it's who I am, and I'm tired of it. I masturbate a fair amount, but it doesn't really give me any satisfaction. More and more, I want more. Meanwhile, there are real problems on the planet, and I'm stuck in a wank loop. It's sick. It's a sickness. I was really feeling guilty. Here's one about me and my mentor. He and I got into this huge fight about practice in Roshi. He was raging, and I was, oh man, I don't want to read that. That Seikon semi-formal training period ended with my Benji days, where I got to go out and visit the world. And I went to LA and visited my mentor. He and I got into this huge fight about practice in Roshi. We were always fighting about Zen and aspects of my teacher's behavior. My friend was raging and I was attacking. Finally he goes, man, I hate fighting with you. That was terrible. And then I took the olive branch. It was all I needed. And I said, I think I wanted to provoke you because we used to be best friends and I haven't really connected with you since I've been at Baldy. And he said, it's true. It's been so great having you here these past few days. You're the greatest. That's sweet. I found this entry. It was right after I first went to the monastery. It was from my best friend ever, my friend from high school. He sent me this nasty email. Self-discovery? You really are lost if you think you're doing anything other than running away from life. At least admit that you're running away from life and not living it. So I just found an interesting entry. It was 2 monks, let's call them Tweedledee and Tweedledum. Great guys, actually, 2 of my favorite monks. So these guys were just, I guess they decided to lay in on me. One of the monks said, you push everything away. It's like, when I grapple with a question, I really grab onto it and I can't let it go. But I always get the feeling like you're holding back. You don't trust. You don't trust anybody. Then one of the monks says, I can't tell you how to solve the problem of self because it's your self. And then he turns to the other monk and he says, Jesus, this stuff I'm teaching him is like Buddhism 101. Haven't you shown him any of this? Because the other monk was kind of mentoring me. And the other monk says, dude, I tried. I tell him over and over and over. His head is like concrete. It's pure stone. It's rock. And I'm nodding my fragile, solid little head, because it's all true. I'm so sick of fighting. I could feel how dense and solid my skull was. You know, I could feel things not penetrating it. This was at a function after a retreat where we were all sitting around and drinking beer and hanging out. And then one of the students made me feel better by turning to me and saying, we're so lucky to be here. It's such a rare opportunity. Okay, this actually turned out to be a very different experience than I had imagined. I thought I was going to find some funny stories from the monastery. It was actually pretty intense reading these old journal entries and seeing how hard it was at the monastery and seeing how hard we monks were on each other, how brutal we could be sometimes, how you were just laid bare sometimes before your peers. And I guess I'm closing on a question mark today. It was a difficult, interesting time. I mean, I was beheading powerful snakes. I was self-pleasuring and then feeling guilty about it. And I was constantly going into koan practice with my teacher and failing my koans, and then coming out of koan practice with my teacher and having my peers criticize me. You just get ripped to the bone at a Rinzai Zen monastery, at least at the monastery that we were at. And I think about it today, and I think I would never in a billion years put up with that shit now. And I have to ask myself, well, is it because you put up with it then? Is it because you had to learn that lesson? Is there a time in a young man or a young woman's life when you have to go somewhere and get the ever-living crud beaten out of you? Because there's something in the way of you living your best life, of you living life, of you tasting what it really means to be on this planet? And is that something and you just need to get beaten up? Or is that just bullying? Bullying and being mean to people. Zen can be really, really hard sometimes. Meditation can be really hard. Just forcing yourself to sit down and do a 20-minute sit, and all this stuff comes up, and it might feel like torture sometimes. You move to a monastery and you dial that up about 700 billion times. So it's just a question I'm ending on today. Like, is that the best way to go about spiritual practice? Is it a necessary moment on the path, or is it something that whose time has come and gone, and we need to find a new way to practice with each other and to teach each other about the Dharma? I ask you that because, man, it was hard reading some of those entries. I feel real sorry for that young man that I was. That's all.